All right, welcome everyone to Rupp Fallsgraff's Empire State Entrepreneurs and New York Business Law podcast, a really fun and informative forum for us to feature our clients, our strategic partners, community leaders, and team members from the firm to talk about relevant issues for entrepreneurs and business owners throughout New York State. As you know by now, I think, my name is David Fallsgraff, and I'm blessed to be the managing partner at Rupp Fallsgraff, a full-service law firm headquartered right here in downtown Buffalo, with offices throughout New York. We're a full-service firm. We love working with entrepreneurial clients like my guest today, Sharon, Cryan, who I'll turn over the mic to in a minute. But before we do that, as always, I wanted to take a quick minute to thank our incredible friends, Mike and Eric here at Incept, for hosting us in this amazing, one-of-a-kind podcast studio. My firm has been using Incept for the past couple of years on a number of strategic projects, and they're doing just an incredible job for us. And I think allowing us to use this podcast studio speaks volumes about the partnership that we've developed with Incept, and we couldn't be any more appreciative for Mike, Eric, and Katie and their whole team here at Incept. They're doing just a great job for us. With that, I'm really excited to introduce an incredibly inspiring person, entrepreneur, chief executive officer, and now a good friend of mine, Sharon Cryan, who's the founder and CEO of a local company called FoodNerd. And FoodNerd is a company that is redefining what kids eat today, tomorrow, and forever, we hope, into the future. So welcome, Sharon, to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
And I wanted to start with having all of our listeners get a sense of your background and sort of what led you to the point of where you felt it was time to transform the food industry for young kids. And, you know, what brought you to the point where you thought it was time that you were going to become an entrepreneur and put a stake in the ground and launch this great company, FoodNerd?
Yeah, I would say the original origin, I think, is really, ever since I can remember watching my mother, struggle from MS, so chronic disease, that's really debilitating. So early on, I just had to see her struggle. And at the same time, was also watching my aunt, who's her sister, who's only a year and a half younger than her, kind of living a completely different lifestyle, but thriving. And so from a really young age, I saw that contrast. And I was like, what is this? What is the difference? And why is my mom suffering and having all this debilitation? And so I would say it was that little initial spark, that started probably 4, 5, 6 years old. And then fast forward, kind of into high school, I started experimenting with my own diet and saw just insane transformations within myself. And then fast forward even more in law school, where it really all kind of connected for me as far as why the industry is the way it is. How is it so broken? Kind of who are the parties are involved, and, being an end consumer, realizing that I really didn't have a lot of the consent that I thought I deserved. That really is kind of the short version of what pushed me to realize that if I wanted to make a difference in this industry, it really had to come from a private entity. So that's how I started FoodNerd.
Tell me, born and bred in Buffalo?
Buffalo, yep.
South Buffalo, or?
So right downtown.
Downtown.
Right over by the First Ward, right in the Seneca-Babcock area of Buffalo. So, yeah, right in the heart of the old broken down area of Buffalo. And that's, it's interesting because right over by the food terminal, right, which is where, General Mills is right there in the backyard. So I grew up unknowingly, right, just so closely related to all these food manufacturing facilities, ultra-processed foods, right? And that was just part of our diet. We ate a tremendous amount of ultra-processed foods. Probably 80-90% of our diet was ultra-processed foods. But you don't know what you don't know, right? And so it was, a low-income area, single mother, disabled, on welfare. Health and wellness isn't something that's talked about. It isn't educated. So, really understanding it from that perspective, now looking back, that's where I understand how industry isn't really connecting with the people that they're actually feeding. And that's a huge disconnect.
Pretty cool. Now, is it true? Like, could you smell the Cheerios and the Lucky Charms from your backyard?
Oh yeah, I remember waiting for the bus up on Seneca Street, waiting for the bus and smelling the sugar all of the flavorants that were going into the formula. Yeah, I remember smelling it. I mean, we could still smell it today.
For sure, for
Mm-hmm.
sure. And from your high school days, then you knew you wanted to go to law school, or was that a desire or a passion that you developed during your undergraduate studies, or walk me through those sort of formative years for you, Sharon, where you thought that maybe having a law degree would be beneficial to you as you thought about sort of the early stages of your career.
Yeah. So this is actually kind of a funny story. So Salino Barnes, obviously a very large law firm here in Western New York. So I remember all the time looking up at the Salino and Barnes billboards that were up and down Seneca Street. And from a very young age, thinking, attorneys must have real influence. Like there's something that they do, like knowledge that they have, they've changed people's lives. So it was, I don't know, probably around 7 or 8, I remember saying, I want to be a lawyer. Because I remember asking my mom, what do they do? Salino and Barnes. You always saw them side by side. And she's like, they're attorneys. And so it's just something in my head that I want to become an attorney. So it really didn't start. That's how basic it started. But as I really started, interning with law firms, actually my first intern wasn't actually in high school. I probably interned for half a dozen or more law firms. I really saw the change that attorneys can make in people's lives, and in every area. And it wasn't really until I actually was in law school and looking at it from a consumer advocacy side that I realized, wow, that's affecting policy. That's where you can make a lot of change as an attorney. So it was a little bit of, I know I'll come back to, my legal profession at some point. But just the basis and understanding made me understand how the system works, which gave me the insights.
And you felt like that training that you got in law school helped you become an advocate for issues that were near and dear to your heart. And at first, if I recall correctly, you were sort of in the political or lobbying space before you launched FoodNerd. And I'm curious as to what your experience was like then, or whether you thought you could sort of have this sort of impact in that career path as compared to sort of private business enterprise, or what did you find out, or what did you learn early on as you obtained your law degree and sort of started to work on issues that were important to you?
Yeah, so I would say that throughout law school, I had met a few kind of political contacts and that's a very overlapped kind of industry. Usually people who are attorneys, it's a nice kind of transition to go into politics or vice versa. And so there's that natural transition was there, but I had met a few people in politics at the time. And, being able to have that platform to speak about these issues that are usually stuck in the court system that the public usually doesn't see about until a decade or two after, that excited me because I wanted to be able to have the voice for people like my younger self and my family who didn't have a voice. And so that was kind of where I started to. So I started interning at some political offices, and then right out of law school, I got a position there. And so it was an incredibly insightful journey, but I realized that it's also extremely long journey to actually get some change. So, and on the side, while I was practicing, I was actually started FoodNerd. Essentially, the concept of FoodNerd had already begun, kind of out of my kitchen at that point. I was preparing fresh foods and meals for attorneys that I was working with, law school students. Like I was people were seeing how the food I was preparing was affecting my health, and it just kind of naturally, that's how the FoodNerd term came about. And so I was already kind of wearing all these multiple hats and realized that the difference I was making in people's lives every day just with the food I was preparing for them, and therefore the food that they weren't eating because they were eating this healthier food that I was making. I mean, it was a night and day difference in so many people. And so that brought me more joy than working on, some of the things I was on the legal side. And that's what I realized, that in order to really feel that change, you have to actually put yourself in a position to change people's life on a daily. And so that's how I knew there was something with FoodNerd that needed to happen. I didn't know it would kind of become what it's become today. But there was just something inside that was like, you have to continue to help people live healthier lives so they can have less suffering. Because at the end of the day, chronic disease it's a horrible thing to have to suffer with, and 6 out of 10 people in the U.S. have it. So it's a serious issue.
So you're working full time, and yet you're going home to then work full time to prepare meals for colleagues and people in your office and friends and family. And was there an individual, or were you self-appointed the food the food nerd as a result of having two full-time professions, one during the day and one by chef extraordinaire at night?
Yeah, no, I would say everyone. I think it was in law school where I would bring my cooler. It was a big cooler too, right? Because I had so much food in there. And then people were like, "Oh, you're such a food nerd." And I was like, "Thank you." I was like, "That was such a great compliment." And then it kind of. I mean, I probably looked crazy compared to a lot of people that would just go to the cafeteria and grab a slice of pizza, or chicken fingers, right? That's what they sold at our law school cafeteria, which is pretty ironic because we need brain power in those moments. But I had my colorful juices, and I had my sprouts, and I had all these amazing foods, and I was just so disciplined. And honestly, it was because I had to work through law school, so I didn't have necessarily the luxury to not feel good, to not have a clear mind, because I didn't have as much time to study. So I needed to really optimize myself, and I was like, I can only sleep 5 hours, and so I really turned to my lifestyle, and it was a night and day difference.
Tell me, are you self-taught, or how did you begin to learn of the importance, the impact, the opportunity for sort of making healthy choices around diet? Was just a passion and an obsession, or did you take any formal training or classes?
So I didn't take any formal training. It really started just reading. Actually, my aunt was a health nut herself, and so she always had these incredible books. And so I started reading the books that she was reading, watching a lot of the scientists that I was following, their videos. I did a study abroad in Japan, and a lot of the research that I came across was actually based out of Japan, and so that was right before law school had started, and AGEs, and so that's kind of like one of the main things that connected all the dots for me. And so it was really just I was really hungry, no pun intended, to really want to educate myself, because I was already well into school. I wasn't going to go back to become a food scientist. I wasn't going to go back to school to become a dietitian or anything in the nutritional field. But there were so many resources out there, and there were so many experts that I could connect with that had that expertise. So it's when I started reaching out to scientists in law school, and the process kind of started unknowingly, because a lot of these topics that I was discovering, I was blown away that no one was talking about them. The research, the scientific evidence was so overwhelming, but I had never heard of some of these things. And so for me, it was just an obsession, I guess. If I had to summarize, it would be an obsession. Yeah, passion, call it.
Tell me, so your passion is growing as you're in law school. You graduate from law school. You get into industry a little bit. Does Food Nerd, is it a light switch moment then where you say, I'm going to start this company? Or did it sort of evolve over time as you were thinking about the ways in which you could have the most impact?
Yeah, so I would say it was probably a 6-month period of, I was meal prepping for people at night. I'll call it meal prepping, but it was like I was growing and germinating sprouts, and then like trying to calculate and formulate, perfect recipes. And so it was a nerding out of meal prepping, and I was doing that for about 6 months. And then there was a handful of maybe 2 or 3 different customers that the difference in their health was so overwhelming. And I remember we were doing a real estate closing. We were working on a closing, and his name was Alex, one of the people I was cooking for, and he had lost like 100 pounds.
Wow.
A lot of weight.
Wow.
And he was maybe 4 months on eating my food. And he had sent me this message saying, his wife had just had the baby, and like he feels like he has the tools now to like be the father he wants to be, and care about his body and his health in a way that he's never cared about it before. And I just remember, just being able to help him and show him this other level of self-love through nutrition, and then how it impacted his life. I mean, it's changed a whole generation or multiple generations. That day, I kind of told the partner I was working with that that's what I wanted to do. And he's like, are you crazy? and he's like, I'm going to miss your food. He's like, I'm going to miss you cooking for me because I was going to move at that point. But that was definitely the moment where that message brought me more joy than
That's incredible.
The closing work I was doing at the time. So, and honestly, I knew at that point I had just gotten into my legal career. I said, if I wait another 10 years, I'll probably never get out. I'll probably never make that transition because I'll be so efficient at what I'm doing. So I was like, if I don't do it now, when I'm young and when I have this motivation, I probably won't.
Incredible. Well, I give you a ton of credit for having the guts and gumption to do it. And remind me the month and year in which FoodNerd became reality for you.
Yep. So it was January 17th of 2019.
So going on a little bit over 4 years. You just celebrated your 4-year anniversary. Congratulations. Yep. Very exciting. Pretty amazing run you've had. Tell our listeners sort of about FoodNerd and sort of the traction and momentum that in that 4-year window you've developed. And I know you're very, very proud of your team. So maybe you could talk a little bit how one of your secret skills, I know, is your recruiting skills and how you've been able to recruit such a talented team to FoodNerd.
Yeah, I would say the first 9 months of FoodNerd was a continuation of that meal prep business that I had started. And we were shipping nationwide. At that point, we had shipped to 32 different states. It was very expensive because it was fresh food. So you have to realize we were growing sprouts in-house, preparing fresh fruits and vegetables and all of these different meals. And then we were packaging it. And we were getting an extended shelf life just on the way we were packaging it. But still, it was only 3-4 weeks max. And then we were dry ice shipping. It was so expensive. So we were shipping to people who were paying $200 in shipping costs just alone each week for the food.
Wow.
And so you have to realize that, we're building this business. And I thought, at that point, Blue Apron, HelloFresh, a lot of those companies were like really getting a ton of momentum and traction. Like they had already raised so much money, and you can kind of look at their business model and you could see like how sustainable is this, the impact on the environment. But the most important thing is that we were getting emails every day of people saying, we wish that we could afford this service. And it broke my heart because they're like, when you have cheaper options, like we'd love to buy this. People reach out, I have cancer, I'm trying to eat clean, I don't know how to do this. Like, I wish I could purchase your products. Or asking, like people email and asking if we could do smaller portions or so they could afford it. And that's kind of what made me click back in to realize, like, why am I even doing this? And it was for, my younger self and my mom who had 6 kids who didn't have the access education to this. And I was like, if we're just this premium organic service that costs $400 a week to eat our products, how many people are we actually, like, are we addressing the issue? These people already have the knowledge and access to healthy food. So I was like, no. So I decided to stop, just to shut it down cold, and start R&D process for how do we take this same quality food but make it affordable and shelf stable? Because shelf stability is the key. That's where the margin is, right? If you have to charge $15 for a salad because it's going to go bad, you have to account for wastes, right? So at the time, it was just me and a few of my team members, and I was like, I don't know how we're going to afford to do this, but we're going to stop our revenue stream as it's coming in. We're going to stop doing this, and we're going to sit and we're just going to call customers and ask them. And we probably maybe 3-4 months just called customers and asked them, what if this was a shelf-stable product, what would you want it to be? Or what foods do you love eating that you wish were healthy? And we got all these insights, Doritos, cookies, crackers. It was all the things that like people love eating. And we're like, well, what if we can take all of this amazing raw food and make it into these products that we actually want to eat? And so that was the thought process of what started, FoodNerd Inc. R&D. And that process was,
what year? Remind us what year this is now.
2019 to 2020.
Oh, so still within the first year to 18 months is where you have this moment where you say, this has got to be scalable. We need to be able to reduce the cost. You interview hundreds of your clients, get this positive feedback, and begin to pivot or transition into more of an R&D focus as opposed to an outward-facing sales focus.
Exactly. Yeah, and we actually for like a 4-month period, we did an R&D box. So we would just experiment with a bunch of shelf-stable products that we were making, and then customers would buy it and then eat it and then tell us what they liked, they didn't like. And that was, I guess we thought we knew what we were doing, but that insight was huge.
Still focused on adults at this
Adults,
stage of
yeah.
the company?
Still focused on adults. And it wasn't until we had, kind of accidentally made a product that was it melted too much on the tongue for like the average adult. They wanted more crunch. And it was ironic because my niece had come into the facility just to pop in and say hi. Or my sister did with her daughters. And I gave it to my niece and she like loved it. And I was like, oh my gosh. I was like, wait a minute. I was like, why are we, we're trying to solve for this issue. But I was like, but there's this consumer that needs it more than the adults. And then that's kind of where we're like, okay, let's start focusing on baby products, cereals, things that we know are daily staples that are really bad for us. And so that's kind of where the current product line that you see now, that's where the technology started focusing on those particular products.
Talk to us a little bit about the current product line. When you think of it, how diverse is it? How many different products are there? What are you seeing sort of enthusiasm or excitement around as you're getting feedback from parents of young kids who are eating your product on a daily basis? But talk to us a little bit about the SKUs and the diversity of product line, and then what has you sort of very excited in terms of the feedback you're receiving?
Yeah, so right now, so we just launched our Mega Puff, which is basically the cereal equivalent to Gerber Puffs, the Serenity Kid Puffs, all of those, the daily snacking products. We call it, like, parents usually call them like, sit down and be quiet puffs, right? Because it's usually when you're out at dinner, it's like the distraction food or the Cheerios, right? Like that occasion. But it's insane how, if you look in every diaper bag, there's that snacking product, whether it's literally a bag of Cheerios or it's a Gerber Puff or the teething products. And so that's the product that we launched now. So that's called our Mega Puffs. And that's really 12 months and older. And what's really incredible is that this product line, there's 5 of them. So we kind of base it on the diversity of Eat the Rainbow, right? So phytonutrients usually determine color. So we have 5 different colors. And it's so night and day different than what those other products are. Those other products are refined ingredients, so flour, oil, sugar, and then additives, right? That's the formula for all snack products on the market. It's crazy how simple it is. And then it's high heat extruded, which is where the multiple levels of processing occurs. So all our ingredients are raw sprouted fruits and vegetables, and then they're cold chain processed. So it's a completely frozen process. So when we actually mold it and turn it into what looks like a puff, it's actually just raw fruits and vegetables that retain up to 98% of their initial state. So there is no flours, there's no refined ingredients. The kids are eating literally raw fruits and vegetables. And so we formulate it. We work with incredible scientists to kind of formulate it and really dial in on the nutritional profile. And it's the only product that has 100% of a child's daily fruits and vegetables in one serving, which is nothing on the market has that right now, which is pretty exciting. So that's our Mega Puffs. And then we have product lines for younger kids and then older kids that we're going to be launching strategically over the next 2 years.
And what would be the ideal age range of your typical consumer?
Yeah, so I would say my son started eating them around 8 months. But right now we're saying, it really is based on where they're at in their development. If they have a lot of saliva, or if they have teeth yet, they can really gum food. That's usually where they start eating puffs and finger foods. So anywhere from 12 to 18 months, all the way up to, we have 6-year-olds that eat our products every day. So it's really that kind of toddler stage, but we're excited to say we have products for kids above that as well.
In FoodNerd, the focus has become exclusively on that demographic as opposed to healthy snacks for adults. You're going to stay focused on sort of the kids sector.
Yeah, so we're targeting solutions really based on what the science says. So science says the first 1,000 days of life is where the child needs the most optimal amount of nutrition. That's where 80% of the brain is developed, the gut, microbiome, everything that is laid down as a foundation developmentally is in that window. So it's actually from the moment of conception to 2 years old. And what research in the last 3 to 5 years and then 20 years have shown is that nutritional deficiencies in that window are irreversible, which makes me, have a lot of pause for thinking about all the food that I ate in that window. And but that's where we see as this incredible opportunity. Like, even if we change 10,000 kids' lives, imagine the impact that's going to have on their ability to learn 10 years later, their ability to, have all of these physical properties that they maybe would have not have without proper nutrition. So it's when we get so jazzed about that potential impact, because we truly believe that if parents don't have the convenient tools, we're not setting parents up for success. And right now, convenience is ultra processed foods. And no parent is sitting there, well, most parents do not have the time or education or resources to meal prep every single thing from scratch. And so it really is, we've created solutions for every stage, including pregnant mom. So we do have products for adults, for the pregnant and breastfeeding mom, which is really exciting because I knew that, when I was pregnant and breastfeeding, I was trying to find healthy snacks, and I didn't love everything that I was finding, and all the supplements were so overpriced. And next thing I know, I had 30 supplements, and I was paying hundreds and hundreds of dollars, for all these supplements, when we can formulate it into one daily snack. That excites me.
That's really cool. Really cool. Tell me a little bit about the manufacturing process done in Western New York. I know you're working on a pretty exciting launch of a new product or a new machine, sort of an automated process to help you scale the business. And can you tell us a little bit about what's gone into that, or how long has this crusade been to get sort of these upgraded manufacturing processes online for you and your company?
Yep. So we're headquartered in Buffalo, New York, which I'm really proud of. Like I say, Buffalo, New York is a very old food manufacturing kind of hub, right? We're the original, one of the big hubs for grains and all the cereals. And so it's ironic that we're, one of the most innovative, food manufacturing companies here in Western New York, kind of to revive that. So I take a lot of pride in that. And we started this process, and it was a manual kind of benchtop in the lab process that we had started. And then we tried to go to all these co-manufacturers saying, hey, could you make this for us? And no one could. And so we spent over 2.5, 3 years just with engineers on developing the process. So it took a long time, but we're 4 months out from commercial scale, which is really exciting. So this year is really pivotal for us to prove that we can scale this process, and that we can have absolutely incredible margins and have a way more sustainable way of manufacturing food. Because if you think about it now, the way we're manufacturing food is not sustainable. So many hands touch the products before it actually gets to the end consumer. And you have to realize that the consumers are paying for that along the way, and the planet is paying for that. And so when we thought about the way that we were doing this, we wanted to be able to take the raw, fresh ingredients and in one facility, create the end product. So we literally grow and germinate our sprouted, baby plants in-house, grow them to their nutritional peak, and then convert them within a 24-hour window to a shelf-stable product that can last up to 25 years. And that makes us really excited about, we're still working the process of proving how sustainable that is, but this manufacturing process hasn't been done before, and that's what this current fundraising round that we're in is going to prove that we can do it.
And how close are you to wrapping up that round that you're on currently?
Yeah, so we're hoping to close the round out within the next 60 days.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah.
And I know it's not just you against the world, though. I'm sure at times it's felt like that. Yeah. But you've really surrounded yourself with some talented team members and some advisory board, and I know individuals who have achieved great success in their own industry. Maybe you could give us an example. You don't have to rattle off the whole team, but of a couple of the individuals who you're really proud to have had an opportunity to consult with and work with, and have them lend their brain power and expertise to really help you refine your business model.
Yeah, I would say I'm definitely gonna call out Dr. Jed Fahey, who's our chief scientific advisor, because he is just a legend in the nutritional studies world. He was at Johns Hopkins for almost 4 decades. We joke and say he's the guy that made broccoli extra healthy. Like, he was on Good Morning America telling everyone to eat your broccoli because it's anti-cancerous compounds. And so we got connected to Dr. Fahey because we're the only company that takes the broccoli sprouts that he spent 40 years researching and actually figured out a way to make it shelf stable but preserve those anti-cancerous compounds. And so when we sent him samples of the product, then he tested it and he was like, wow, this is incredible. This is, and that was that beautiful thing where it's like his life's work can actually impact people now because it's in a physical form. So Dr. Fahey is our chief scientific advisor, and just through him alone has brought on just incredible scientists and people that, everybody has the same goal. We actually want to make everyone's lives healthier. But when you're kind of stuck in the research realm and you're stuck at the university, your mindset is just getting grants and continuing research. You're not necessarily thinking, how does this translate to the actual person? And that's really where there's a 10-year lag, sometimes 20-year lag before something actually gets to the consumer. And so, Jed and I have kind of been on this mission to how do we plug in more universities? And so right now we're doing a clinical trial with Purdue University with children on the autistic spectrum, which is mind-blowing, that we were able to do that. But it's kind of where you have to merge those worlds because the researchers, they want to make an impact, but it usually takes so long. So, in a very short time, we're able to use our technology as a vehicle for delivery for clinical trial nutrients is pretty incredible. So Dr. Fahey is definitely something I like to call out. And then we have some really incredible industry experts that have worked for the largest food companies in the world, where it was a point in their career where they wanted to make a bigger impact as well. So I like to say that, FoodNerd is a mission, and people are really drawn to the mission. And then everybody has these incredible skill sets that I would never have. And it's just amazing to see we call it the FoodNerd family that we're building.
I love, too, as you describe your business, it reminds me a little bit of my little law firm in the sense that words that I love to describe clients or friends as are people who are able to be a challenger brand or disruptors in a very, as you pointed out, sort of traditionally very risk adverse, and the General Millses of the worlds and the Gerbers of the worlds. And here comes this little incredible entrepreneur from Buffalo, New York, who's going to say, I think there could be a better way to do this. There might be more healthy alternatives or options for babies and adolescent children, and so it's almost as though you're disrupting the status quo, and that's something I admire a ton in you, and obviously I think you've got some momentum that you're building now that is going to last. And on that, I know you've got your own podcast, hashtag Food Truth, and but are individuals like Dr. Fahey participants in that, or can we as listeners learn a little bit more about the science behind your product by listening to your podcast?
Absolutely. Yep. No, we're really excited to have, we have a couple episodes out with, a lot of the researchers that we're working with, and they're saying, hey, what are you doing in the lab? And we're excited to say that, we have some really world-renowned, scientists that are lined up, and it's exciting when you think about where, most people think that research and scientists is just so overwhelming and so complicated. But when you can actually sit with a scientist and you ask them, hey, what are you actually doing and how can you translate to the average person? Amazing things happen because it's usually through these, 200-page papers that they have to put out, and they publish in these journals and no one ever sees them. And there's all these caveats and there's all these scientific, terms that make no sense. But when you sit with Dr. Fahey and you say, he can sit there and say the sulforaphane compound triggers the NFR2 pathway in the human body, which then triggers, these little warriors that go out and reduce inflammation. And it's so overwhelming. But when you can just really say, so what you're saying is raw broccoli and broccoli sprouts can prevent cancer. That's all. Like, that's what his 30 and 40 years of research is showing. But not just a little bit. Like, these are insanely powerful compounds. They're more powerful than any pharmaceutical application that we have right now. And this is just nature. And that research is so powerful, but we need to talk about it more. And we need to give people back the power to say that what you put out the end of your fork actually makes a huge difference in the quality of your life. And if you really listen to these scientists, and there's so many of them that are now, really not dumbing down, but really making the science more digestible to everybody, you can realize that we actually have the tools that we need to live the healthiest lives, and that it doesn't require a lot of money. a lot of education. It just is the know-how and the self-love to say, okay, I'm gonna choose this over this. And that's like I always say we can dive really deep and we can really nerd out about how this is happening in your body. But at the end of the day, none of that matters. It matters, are you doing it? And are we giving our children the tools to have a healthy life and telling them and showing them from a young age? And so that's why that's why we work with scientists. And then we are a group of moms to bring it back down to real life and
That's
say, how
great.
does this apply to me, every day? So
Where can we find your product? Where can moms or parents go? What will be ultimately your distribution channels or chains that we can look to as consumers to support you in your effort to disrupt this traditional industry?
yeah, so right now we're available just exclusively on foodnerdinc.com. So you can find us on our social medias at foodnerdinc or on our website. And then in the near future, we'll be on Amazon. And then we're also going to be launching in strategic smaller retailers this year. And then, throughout 2025 and the years on, we'll be in larger retails.
And tell me, if you look ahead, say 5 years from now, what success look like, or what does a dream come true look like for you and the company as you think about your ability to scale, and what incredible outcomes that may have down the road on individuals and families and children and well-being and health and nutrition. Do you think you can transform this industry?
Oh, I know we can. Yeah, absolutely. And I think we already have. I mean, just the handful of children that have been consuming these products for their entire life or half of their life, right there makes all of it worth it. So I would say in 5 years from now, I would love to see this option available to parents at every gas station. Everywhere where you look and you're caught between convenience and health, there should be a truly healthy option for parents that they can reach for. And so I would say right next to every bag of combos that you see at the gas station, there should be a bag of FoodNerd that gives people a choice. So that's my goal for 5 years from now. And also the consumer, that no matter your education level, your income level, that everybody will know that they can have a better option, and that it's the same price as combos. That is our goal, to be able to truly make a product that price point wise everybody can afford, and we know we can. It's just a matter of everybody, kind of getting behind us and supporting us, and we know we can get there. So that's success for me, is seeing a little kid, kind of in the inner city of Buffalo where I was raised, eating a bag of FoodNerd.
I'm into that. I'm sure that's going to happen. Knowing you, I am certain that that's going to be an outcome we can all look forward to. As we begin to sort of wind this thing down, and I so appreciate your time today, Sharon, there'll be a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of business owners like you who are facing the challenges of having confidence to launch their businesses or to encounter unforeseen circumstances or fundraising issues or legal pitfalls. But as you think about the last 4 years and this journey that you've been on and some of the success that you've had, at a high level, any advice that you can think about imparting onto other small business owners, entrepreneurs that may be listening today?
Yeah, I would say I would say the number one thing is have a question that you ask yourself, every month, kind of every quarter. And it's, what is the value that I'm bringing to somebody's life? Because no matter how the business looks, we've pivoted so many times, but the value that we're bringing to customers has never changed, that level of value. So I think sometimes we get caught as entrepreneurs in our mind of, I pitched this initial idea and I have to be married to it and I have to stick with it. And, it takes a lot of humility to say, well, I realize that that's not bringing the level of value that I know I can deliver. And I have to realize that if I don't pivot and I don't sit and actually reflect of, can I make a bigger value if I change the product or if I modify it? Oftentimes we're our own biggest, or worst enemies. We really stop ourselves. And it usually comes down to just our ego, And so there were so many times where I had investors saying, move this product faster, or can you do this? And I said, well, I think we can make a bigger value in people's life if we do this tweak. And that if making life better is your goal, and you like have that guiding principle, and you make sure you're always doing that, then that's what's going to carry you through, I think, to actually having success in business, is making sure you're bringing value. And yeah, and I would also say, never make sure you have a lot of people around you, not too many, but the right amount of people who can kind of keep you in check. I think that's really important, making sure that you have people that know your true mission and can say, hey, you're straying away, or, you're not. And that's really important as well, because it's stressful owning a business, and it's stressful trying to do anything different because all the odds are against you. So make sure you have a team, and make sure you're self-correcting, and go back to your why. It's really important.
I think that's so telling. And as you were talking earlier in the podcast, I was thinking to myself, what incredible resolve, resiliency were words that came to my mind as I was thinking about your path, and then also how many times you did force yourself to pivot along the way, not only career path but product wise. And those self reflections aren't always easy when you think you want to be on a path that you're going to know what the outcome is, but sometimes that's not often the best path, and so you have to challenge yourself to be self-aware and to listen to other advisors, and then be willing to pivot. And I think in this podcast you pivoted 4 or 5 times
At
alone
least, yeah.
with the vision for the company, but always coming back to the why and the health background from the time you were a young kid yourself, and thinking about nutrition as an important part of your life and your family's life. And then against that backdrop, building this company and pivoting and changing and being resilient and resolved to effectuate the change is really admirable. And for someone who is definitely mature beyond your years, Sharon, you're building a great company, and look forward to great success in the years to come. So, all right, last question. Little known fact about you, or next plan, place you want to go visit, or anything that about you that we didn't get yet that we need to know.
Okay, well, a fun fact, I played rugby. I know everyone always thinks that's like, what? So I played, I actually started one of the local rugby teams here when I was 14 in my freshman year of high school, and it was one of the best things I've ever done. And yeah, I was scrum half, and it was absolutely incredible. And I suggest anybody who doesn't know what sport to play to try rugby. It's amazing, and it's the best community ever. So, and support the Buffalo teams as well. So, fun fact, I love rugby. I don't play anymore, but yeah, fun fact.
With that, I think we can wrap it. I do want to thank our special guest, Sharon Cryan, the CEO of FoodNerd and founder, for being here with us today, and for taking us through your journey and inspiring me, and I'm sure many others. And we look for great things in the future from you and FoodNerd. So thank you again.
Well, thank you for having me. It's exciting to talk about it, and I hope one day we can look back at this and say, oh, that time, we're changing, 200 kids' lives, and now it's 2 million. So thank you for this. I'm excited to look back on it one day.
That's great. Well, thanks again, Sharon, for coming in.